Mention the word Godzilla to most Americans, at least those who are not hardcore movie nerds and over 50. They will likely think of 1956's Godzilla King of the Monsters, starring Raymond Burr. They may not realize that movie was an Americanized revision of the original Japanese Gojira from 2 years earlier. Outward appearances may suggest to some that it might be a joint venture, but no. Now, I have long wondered just how much of a difference there was between the two. I finally have had a chance to compare, and there's plenty. Scenes added, scenes deleted, and sequences scrambled. An important point to remember is that this was only 9 years after Japan was on the receiving end of 2 nuclear bombs. The memory was still alive, and the theme of the destruction and the latent radiation is woven throughout. Some of the deleted scenes dwelt on those subjects and were replaced with others that were a bit turgid. That's Burr's style. But still, in the American version, the emotional drama is a bit watered down. Now, I had to confront 2 difficulties to put this project together. One is that Toho still holds the copyrights on both versions. And Toho ranks right up there with Disney for overactive legal departments. So clips will, of necessity, be hacked up and or distorted. Second is that I had to decide which version I would use as the base. Now, I decided to follow history. Gojira was first and offered the raw material for Godzilla to manipulate. And who am I to question that? And yes, the Coast Guard credit is on the original. First thing you notice is that the Japanese version displays the credits. The American displays them at the end. Japanese actor, stuntman Naruo Nakajima and his bestest friend. Now, let's hold it here for a few moments. The original starts off with this boat sequence, but the American version cuts to our hero crawling out of the rubble and going into a setup for a long flashback, the entire remainder of the movie.
Now there are only a few. My name is Steve Martin.
No. Let's just get this out of your head now.
I'm a foreign correspondent for United World News. I was headed for an assignment in Cairo when I stopped off in Tokyo for a social call. But it turned out to be a visit to the living hell of another world.
Parts of this emergency hospital sequence are copied from later on in the original.
Emergency hospitals were overflowing with the maimed and the dead. For the living, the horror of last night was over. The only thought left was the paralyzing fear that it could happen again today or tomorrow. Everyone who had survived without serious injury was helping to repair the human wreckage. One of the survivors was Emiko Yamane, the daughter of Japan's famous paleontologist. I don't know how many hours went by before an auxiliary hospital unit found me.
Emiko!
Steve Martin. Are you better?
The back of Emiko's stand-in's head is added.
After last night, I'm lucky to be alive.
I guess we're all living on borrowed time. Oh, Steve, what brought this upon us?
I don't know, Emiko. I don't know.
When I think back, only a few days ago I was en route to Cairo, with a few days layover in Tokyo. I was looking forward to a visit with an old college friend, Dr. Serizawa, a theoretical scientist who was gaining great recognition in the Far East for his unusual experiments.
A little bit of foreshadowing here.
10,000 feet below, an incident was about to take place that would shake the foundations of the civilized world.
Now back to the fishing boat. This radio room shows up a few more times. Now, for the real-life inspiration for this whole scene, the whole boat scene, Google Lucky Dragon 5. And here's the first of many detours on our journey.
This morning, it would have been impossible for anyone to convince me that I would ever see Tokyo like this again.
はい、南海サルベージの尾形です。え？何？
I'm sorry, Mr. Martin, but we must ask you to come to the security office for questioning.
It's a polite way of telling me I'm under arrest.
分かった。
No, no arrest,
Please.
just questioning.
エミコさん、すまん。
何か事故でも？
ヨナガさん、この方、マーティンです。
SOS が入ったんだ。
How do you do, Mr. Martin?
行かなくちゃなら
Mr.
ない。
Iwanaga?
By the way, Iwanaga is actually the actor's name.
During your flight
またって
last
すまなか
night,
った
did
けど、
anything unusual occur?
急いで行ったらまだ間に合うよ。
Well, I didn't notice anything.
お仕事なら仕方ないわ。
さあ、急いだ急いだ。
I understand you've questioned everyone on my flight. What is it you're trying to find out? I represent United World News.
You see, we don't know what it is we're dealing with. At 3:30 this morning, a ship from Tokyo was literally wiped from the surface of the ocean in a matter of seconds.
Well, whatever's being done, I'd like to find out about.
All right, come with me.
Nankai 線所属火災貨物船栄光丸7500トンは
This is the chart room of the Nankai Steamship Company. It was their ship which was sunk.
Interestingly, when they're speaking Japanese, the subtitles say South Seas for the name of the shipping company. But when speaking English, they say
They're at a
Nankai.
loss to explain how their
The
ship
Japanese are the same thing.
いきなり SOS を発信してそのまま消息を絶ったんですか。
Any survivors?
リンゴ丸が現場に急行中ですから何か手がかりが。
Many of the revisions are simply the deletion of an original scene where people are explaining things
Direct contact with the
and
rescue ship now.
substituting
It should
Steve
arrive at
and
the scene of the
or
sinking in a
his
few hours.
security buddy explaining the same things. And sometimes they just insert a whole new scene, usually so that Steve can file his story.
That's it, operator. Mr. George Lawrence, United World News, Chicago, USA. Staggering death toll forces all shipping schedules be canceled. Sign it, Steve Martin.
せめて生存者があるとかないとかぐらいの見通しもつかないんですか。
はい、とにかく明朝までお待ちください。ヘリコプターも出動していますし、コーズと指揮根も現場へ急行中です。
Nankai Shipping Company swarmed with distraught families pleading for news of lost crews.
ね、もっと捜査能力を増したらどうですか。2隻ぐらいじゃどうにもしようがないじゃないですか。いや、決して2隻だけ
And
に
here's that radio room again, shot from two angles to make it look like two different locations.
A few survivors who had been found died in a matter of minutes from shock and strange burns.
とりあえず漁船に
The radio room
救助され
again.
た3名は大戸島へ入港しますので、早速こちらから巡視船2隻を派遣いたしました。信じられん。
どっちの乗り組みいいんでしょう。
全く信じられん。
なんか微妙な情報が入ってます。
With disaster following disaster, the terror-stricken people demanded action be taken. Security officials and scientists
I had to think a bit about where to place this clip.
was among the top scientists.
This
invited to the
meeting doesn't take place
I
for
had
another
met
20
Dr.
minutes
Yamane
or
through my
so.
friend
in the
Serizawa several years ago.
Dr. Yamana
There was
has
to be
not
an
yet
answer
been
to these
introduced,
mysterious ship
and we know
disasters
nothing about his viewpoint
that
on
would
this
come
young
to
man.
these men.
Later, after his character has been fleshed out, the scene makes more sense.
信じられん。全く信じられん。
The man in the white suit says they may have to close shipping lanes. Steve already wrote that all shipping had been canceled, for even more conflict between versions. Even substituting the original subtitle dialogue with
My
a new
Japanese is a little
voiceover,
rusty.
completely changing the meaning of the scene, doesn't help.
Dr.
We'll
Yamane
return
is
to
suggesting
it
to the
at the
officials
proper
as
time.
they question the natives of a small island. He says that Odo Island is close
No,
to
he
the
said
area where
nothing
the
of the
disasters
sort.
have taken place.
You'll see when we get to the actual meeting in Gojira.
Odo Island, a bleak spot of land in the Pacific, populated with several
Occasionally,
hundred
the
natives
two
who are now
versions do
half
run in
paralyzed
parallel.
with fear.
Sort of. Trim a few frames or a second here and there, and presto, 25 seconds gone from the runtime.
どう考えてもただごとじゃねえぞ。水間、いかだ
These people were the only ones who had seen some of the fires at sea.
And sometimes just cut out a scene without replacing it.
They were also the only ones who saw a survivor of the sinking, and his visit was short.
Gojira の餌食にしなきゃなんねえぞ。
The next morning, a helicopter was dispatched from Tokyo.
Helicopter? Well, Burr was Canadian, so what do you want?
The security officer, Mr. Iwanaga, had arranged for me to join the group of officials who were to question the natives of Odo Island. While various natives of the island were being interrogated by the officials, Tomo and I went out among the natives.
No, Mr. Martin. These island people are very superstitious.
Well, let's see what else we can find out.
The island people are beset by many dangers, Steve. Some real, some imagined. This ceremony is dedicated to one such danger.
Like I said, simply the deletion of an original scene
There is a
where
legend among
people
the
are
island
explaining
people,
things
somewhere off
and
their shores,
substituting
there exists a
Iwanaga
logical-
explaining the same things.
Too terrible for words to see. Many centuries ago, they used to send a young girl out on a raft each year as a sacrifice.
The name of this monster.
Did you hear that? Godzilla.
They believe their Godzilla is responsible for all these ship disasters?
They're certain of it.
This sequence is a problem. I can't really deal with it the same as the rest. In '54, there was a great sequence where a typhoon and a kaiju rained destruction on a small island. Very dramatic and highly effective. In '56, Terry Morse seems to have decided that the scene was too good for American audiences, so he set off to ruin it. First by dropping in 4 inserts and 4 cutaway reaction shots of our Boy Scout camera, along with a voiceover. Then by taking the original footage and scrambling it. Yes, we start with a few seconds of the storm and end with a crushed toy helicopter, but are left with a feeling of not knowing how we got there.
The next morning, the officials brought some of the islanders back to Tokyo to make a direct report. Each of the natives of Odo Island told his own story.
Yep,
of the
can't
sudden
forget those cows and
turbulence,
pigs.
and had his own ideas of its cause. They were all of the destruction was brought about by a living creature.
常識を疑われそうで弱るんですが。
Assuming you've all seen one or the other or both of these films, I don't see any reason to continue showing all these long scenes that need merciless cutting or disfiguring. You'll get the beginning and the end, and maybe a bit in between if it's important.
I have not been to the island myself.
現地
The
の
world today
調査も
is
せず
filled
に
with many mysteries.
見解
Island.
I'm gonna catch Dr. Yamane. I'll see you later.
Yamane's speech was trimmed so that Steve could go talk to his stand-in in the hallway.
It seems to me that there are still forces left in this world that none of us can understand.
Of course. PJ at 2 o'clock.
Good. See you then.
Steve stopped in Tokyo to visit Soza, but the shots of him on the dock were cut, ironically to make room for Steve's inserts.
But there was still a feeling of anxiety among us all.
You know, that's quite a send-off for a scientific expedition.
Perhaps the two exceptions were
We need
Emiko
Steve's
and a young
voiceover
Marine
at this
officer
point,
named
since
Ogata.
we cut the earlier
At the
scene
moment, they
that
seem
showed
more interested in
Emiko
each
and
other.
Ogata as a couple. The 56 scene has 6 inserts, but ends up being 30 seconds shorter than the 54, which suggests the original had a few seconds trimmed here and there, again. Now this can sometimes make it look like the scenes are out of order, especially when mixed with the inserts. I'm leaving out the inserts on this. They're not important, and all the other footage is the same.
恵美子ごらんトリロバイトだ今は絶滅したと信じられている三葉虫大変なもんなんだよ
It's a fabulous discovery.
Godzilla!
田辺さん私は見た確かにジュラ紀の生物だどこですか
Once again, I'm leaving out the Steve Martin inserts, since they have nothing to do with anything. However, there is one brief sequence in the middle where we switch back and forth between Godzilla and Burzilla every 2 seconds. After the third switch, I lost track of which was which. Although I think the lizard was a slightly better actor.
こっちです。こっちです。どうした？どうした？あれなんだい？足跡だ。
It can safely be assumed that 2 million years ago, this Brontosaurus and other ancient reptiles...
3 scenes in a row of Raymond Burr not contributing. This time he just sits there fidgeting, not even taking notes like you'd expect a reporter to be doing. He has 6 inserts totaling 45 seconds. Why? We don't need him. Bye-bye.
Roam the earth.
The rest, in the original, runs almost 5 minutes. The 56 version cuts that in half. So we are spared much of the irrelevant science
Between the land-living and the sea-living animals.
and the polite political discourse. But we are treated to Yamane's mispronunciation of
One
phenomena.
answer could be that some rare phenomenon of nature allowed this...
仮にこれを大戸島の伝説に従ってゴジラと呼称します。
Professor Yamane makes his opinion quite clear. Godzilla's revival is caused by H-bomb testing.
Repeated experiments of H-bombs.
それが度重なる水爆実験によって彼らの生活環境を完全に破壊され、その年度のガイガーカウンターによる放射能検出定量分析によるストロンチウム90の発見、ゴジラに付着していたこの砂の中に水爆の放射能を多量に発見することができたのであります。
And H-bomb testing is bad. We've been slugging away at this for a half hour, and that's more than enough for one sitting. This project is turning out to be much more complicated than I anticipated. So stay tuned for round 2 of Gojira 54 versus Godzilla 56. Coming soon.